Witness for Peace started around the time that the Civil War was happening in Nicaragua. And the organization helps to recognize the connections between the United States and our military and government and what's happening in a lot of Central American conflicts. So the role of our organization and its supporters is to act as witnesses to make sure that people in Central America who are experiencing violence or oppressive circumstances have their stories told, and so that there is greater accountability between us and the communities that we act in solidarity with. So Alfredo will be talking about the Garifuna people, which is a part of the African diaspora in Central America. He'll tell you a little bit more about that history and kind of the current struggles that his people face. Right now, a big part of the conflict in Honduras has to do with the U.S. drug war. Who in here has maybe studied a little bit about the U.S. drug war? Anybody? Seen a documentary on Netflix, anything like that? So oftentimes I think we're more familiar with what happens with incarceration of Black people in this country with regards to drugs or false accusations around drugs and things like that. But this presentation will hopefully help you guys draw the connections between what's happening with the war on drugs here and the war on drugs as it relates to where those products originate from. So Witness for Peace has a few upcoming events. The last slide after the presentation is over will have some information about upcoming delegations. So a delegation is a group of people from the U.S. who will travel to some of these places to help serve as witnesses and to report back kind of what is going on the grounds. There's a youth delegation to Nicaragua that is about 10 days. You'd stay with families in Nicaragua. Your host is a former executive director of Witness for Peace. He is Nicaraguan and has lived half of his life down there and half in the U.S. So the focus of that one is mostly on fair trade and kind of economic policies. There's also an upcoming delegation to Colombia, so there's information on the last slide about that as well. Next week we have an event that is called the Pilgrimage, and it is another one of our main events as an organization. The Pilgrimage happens during the Holy Week right before Easter every year. And what happens is groups of people mobilize in public in cities around kind of North and South Carolina to demonstrate the ongoing struggles of people leading into the Easter week. So Witness for Peace is not a religious organization, but the history of the organization, there's always been strong connections with faith communities. Does anyone have any questions about those things? I have some information that I'll be passing around at some point. We have the schedule for the upcoming pilgrimage if you're interested. And we also have a brochure that tells you a little bit more about the organization. And Alfredo is going to be speaking to you all in Spanish. As your teacher said, please pay extra special attention if there are upcoming assignments. And also there will be time for questions at the end. So I hope that you all are thinking critically about the information that he's saying, not just as a presentation, but recognize that he's speaking about his life and his experiences, and these are very real circumstances that his people are facing. So please give him your utmost respect and attention. Thank you.
Gracias. Me gusta siempre saludar en mi lengua materna.
So I like to give greetings in my maternal tongue.
Bello es la tarde.
So that, what is that?
Garífuna. Bello es la tarde.
Okay, so that phrase, means afternoon. Okay, means afternoon.
Y en la mañana estábamos con otros estudiantes, pero era en la mañana.
And in the morning we were with other students, but obviously it was in the morning.
La mañana es binafi.
And the morning is binafi. Voy a aprender un poquito.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Alfredo López, soy el vicepresidente de la organización.
My name is Alfredo López, and I'm the vice president of the organization of the, as we state here, the Black Fraternal
de negros en Honduras. Es importante decirle de dónde vienen los garífunas, ustedes como estudiantes.
And so it's important for one thing to talk about where the garifunas come from. Part of our ancestry is African ancestry.
Nosotros venimos nuestros ancestros vienen de África.
Our ancestors come from Africa.
En los barcos negreros venían gente de África para los mercados de esclavos.
And in those boats, there were people who basically enslaved black people from Africa and brought them to this continent.
En los años 1600.
This was back in the 1600s.
Y en una isla del Caribe, San Vincent, hubo una rebelión en esos barcos.
And in one island in the Caribbean, St. Vincent, there was a rebellion in one of those boats.
Y escaparon los potenciales esclavos a otra isla pequeña.
And the people who were to be slaves escaped and they left from that island.
Estos hombres y mujeres fueron encontrados por una población indígena que faenaba a pescar a esa isla.
So these people were found by indigenous people who tended to fish in that island.
Y estas personas eran indígenas del Caribe, los arahuacos y los calinas.
And so these were the Arahuaco and Caina indigenous peoples.
Y luego vino una mezcla entre estas dos poblaciones.
And then there was an intermixing between these two different populations.
De ahí es donde nosotros venimos.
And that's where we come from.
Nosotros no llegamos a los mercados de esclavos.
So we never arrived to the markets of slaves.
Sin embargo, hemos peleado toda la vida.
But we've had to fight our whole lives.
De manera que ahora todavía seguimos.
And we still continue that struggle, that fight.
Porque es un pueblo que mantiene su cultura, sus tradiciones, sus raíces.
Because it's a people that maintains its culture, its tradition, its roots.
Nuestra lengua es importante para nosotros.
Our language is important for us.
Y por eso tenemos que seguir luchando. No podemos desaparecer por intereses de los que tienen mucho poder.
And that's why we continue to fight. We can't give up the fight due to the interests that are the powerful interests.
Y bueno, entonces la historia empieza para mostrarles aquí una diapositiva.
And so we're going to show a slide here.
Y esta es una manifestación garífuna.
And this is a Garifuna protest.
Y pueden ver los tambores ahí al frente.
And you can see the drums there in the forefront.
Los tambores para nosotros son importantes.
The drums are very important for us.
Son parte de nuestra cultura.
They're part of our culture.
Y este pueblo, en 2001, fue declarado Patrimonio Intangible de la Humanidad.
And these people were declared in 2001 an intangible patrimonio, would be the resource of humanity, I guess.
Porque a través de todos estos años hemos podido mantener esta cultura viva.
Because all throughout these years we've been able to maintain this culture alive.
Nuestra manera de vivir ancestralmente es la pesca.
So our ancestral way of living is through fishing,
La pesca artesanal
artisanal fishing,
y la agricultura sostenible.
and sustainable agriculture.
Y ahora estas actividades están en peligro
And now these activities are in danger
a raíz de esa política pública de la que vamos a hablar acá el día de hoy.
due to those public policies that we're going to be sharing about today.
Y parte de nuestro trabajo el trabajo legal que hacemos, hemos logrado 2 casos ante la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos. ¿Quiénes de ustedes saben quién es la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos?
So part of our legal work is we've had a couple victories, and these have been through the International Court of Human Rights. Have any of you heard of this organization, the International Court of Human Rights?
El sistema está la Comisión Interamericana en Washington y la Corte Interamericana en San José, Costa Rica.
So there's the Inter-American, La Comisión, is in the Commission, which is in Washington, Y luego
Y la Corte Interamericana de Derechos Humanos es una corte un poco más arriba.
And the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, which is based in Costa Rica.
Entonces estamos en ese sistema luchando para mantener nuestras comunidades vivas.
And so we're in that system to try to fight to maintain alive our communities.
Hemos logrado 2 sentencias este año que recién pasó.
So we've obtained a couple judgments in this past year that finished.
Una es Triunfo de la Cruz versus el Estado de Honduras.
And one was a victory of De la Cruz against the state of Honduras.
Y Punta Piedra, otra comunidad, versus el Estado de Honduras.
And the other one was Punta Piedra, which is another community, against the state of Honduras.
Por violación de nuestro territorio ancestral.
And both of these were in terms of violation against our ancestral homelands.
Porque nuestro principio de la propiedad es la propiedad colectiva, no existe la propiedad privada en nuestra comunidad.
Because our principles of property are communal property. We don't have any private property in our communities.
Y aquí podemos ver esta diapositiva con aviones de los narcotraficantes, ¿verdad? Que ese es uno de los temas que nos afecta muchísimo, por eso hablamos un poco sobre el tema.
And here we can see on this slide one of the airplanes that's used by the drug traffickers. And the drug trafficking is something that impacts us, and that's why we're going to talk about it.
Nuestras comunidades están a lo largo y ancho del Caribe hondureño, o sea que nosotros tenemos mar, vivimos a 100 metros del mar.
So our communities are all extended in the Caribbean coast of Honduras. We're within 100 yards basically of the coastline throughout Honduras.
El Atlántico.
Atlantic Ocean.
Por eso, muchas de estas actividades se hacen en nuestras comunidades.
So that's what many of these activities are carried out in our communities.
Han habido asesinatos, yo personalmente estuve en la cárcel 6 años y medio.
And so there have been assassinations, and I personally was in jail for six and a half years.
Y por acusado de una acusación falsa, desde luego.
And I was there because of a false accusation against myself.
Mientras los ricos y famosos y los militares hacen mucha plata, que son muy ricos, tienen mucho dinero.
And at the same time, the rich and the powerful are just making more money and gaining more wealth.
Pero el asunto es que el gobierno norteamericano apoya a esta gente.
But the thing is that the U.S. government supports these people.
Y ese es un asunto de eso que estamos hablando acá en Estados Unidos.
And this is the issue that we're bringing here to talk about in the U.S.
Y quisiéramos que esas cosas pudiesen cambiar.
And we wish for these things to change.
Porque lo que hacen es apoyar a esta gente y nos mandan armas.
Because what they do is support these people and they send weapons.
Y no hay medicina en los hospitales.
And there's no medicines in the hospitals.
Y no hay educación de calidad.
And we don't have a high quality education.
Entonces el tema de la migración pues está latente, porque el producto de todas estas malas políticas, ya van a ver ustedes por qué.
And so that produces obviously migration, and that's because of all these policies that are implemented.
Y aquí tenemos una propuesta del profesor Chomsky, que nosotros decimos que es una realidad, lo sentimos mucho, pero esa es la realidad, que dice que las drogas son un instrumento de Estados Unidos para criminalizar a los pobres. Exactamente es lo que pasa.
And this is a statement by Professor Chomsky, who states that the drug war is an instrument of the U.S. to criminalize the poor, and this is something that we're in agreement with.
¿Alguno de ustedes sabe quién es el profesor Chomsky?
Do any of you know who Professor Chomsky is?
El profesor Chomsky es un intelectual, profesor universitario de los Estados Unidos.
He's an intellectual, he's a university professor here in the United States.
Y lo que les decía, los efectos de estas políticas es más migración, más pobreza, estamos perdiendo nuestro territorio y la criminalización de los movimientos sociales, que nosotros somos parte de ese movimiento social.
And so we see more immigration, more poverty, loss of territory, and we also have the criminalization of the social movements.
Después del golpe de Estado, hemos tenido más de 300 víctimas, algunos amigos nuestros, compañeras mujeres, que han sido asesinados por los escuadrones de la muerte y los paramilitares.
So after the coup d'etat, we've had over 300 victims, some of them friends of ours, some of them women, different people who have been attacked by the death squads and the paramilitaries.
Aquí, lo que decía el profesor, solo reafirma lo que dice el profesor Chomsky.
And here, this is a reaffirmation of what Professor Chomsky talks about.
Un bote de humildes campesinos, misquitos en Honduras,
A boat of humble campesinos in Honduras,
y que venían a hacer sus actividades, fue ametrallado por la DEA de Estados Unidos.
and they were just going about their daily business, and they were killed by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency.
Porque los confundieron con narcotraficantes.
Because they confused them with drug traffickers.
Y dos mujeres preñadas asesinadas,
And there were
ella es una de ellas.
2 pregnant women who were killed, and that was one of the women.
Eso es lo que pasa mientras los bancos siguen lavando el dinero, los capos de la droga siguen haciendo mucho dinero, ¿verdad? Y los jóvenes de nuestros países se están dañando sus cerebros, ¿verdad? Que eso es lo más terrible. No hay esperanzas. En algunos lugares la juventud está perdida, algunos se están quedando locos, ¿verdad?
And all this is happening while the banks are getting richer, the drug leaders, drug traffickers are also profiting from all this, and the young people are losing their hope, some of them even going crazy because of lack of opportunities.
Es de nuestro interés, ¿verdad?, denunciar estas cosas.
And it's our interest to denounce these kind of things.
Porque no es posible, yo que estuve 6 años en la cárcel y 6 años y medio, sin tener nada que ver con ese negocio, lo que pasó que estábamos parando un proyecto de 17 millones de dólares, un megaproyecto que se hacía en nuestra comunidad.
And it's not possible that this kind of thing happens. And I was 6.5 years in jail, and this was because I was working to stop this huge project, 17 millones de dólares. It was worth $17 million.
Al final paramos el proyecto, pero tuve que pagar el precio, y ese es el precio.
And at the end, we were able to stop that project from being implemented, but that was the price I paid. That I was then sent to jail.
De ese proyecto es que aparece ahora que la Corte Interamericana se pronunció a favor nuestro. Ganamos el caso.
And that was a project that now the Inter-American Court of Justice pronounced itself in our favor around that project that we stopped.
Y por eso no desmayamos no vamos a parar de trabajar.
And that's why we won't stop in the struggle that we carry on.
Porque es cierto que en Estados Unidos no es fácil.
Because it's true, it's not easy in the United States.
Pero tenemos que hacer el esfuerzo.
But we have to continue the struggle.
Porque si nos quedamos sentados en la casa, estamos listos para ser enterrados.
Because if we just stay with our arms crossed at home, we're just going to be buried.
Y ese es el asunto. ¿Qué es lo que se puede hacer? Hay muchas cosas que la población aquí puede hacer.
So that's what we're focusing on. And so what can you do? What can the population here in the U.S. do? There are a number of things that you can do.
Es importante informarse, información veraz.
So it's important, first of all, to have the right information, real information.
Desde luego es difícil porque los medios de comunicación aquí están a favor de las barbaridades que hacen y las mentiras que le dan a la gente.
And of course it's very difficult because the media here is very biased and it's very much in support of the barbarities that are committed and the kind of lies that are disseminated.
Pero para eso es que venimos nosotros haciendo un gran esfuerzo, muchas veces peleando por una visa.
But that's why we come here. We make a lot of effort to come and sometimes even fighting to get a visa.
Y por eso hacemos el trabajo, queremos hacerlo con mucha efectividad, que la gente entienda de qué estamos hablando.
And that's why we do the work, and we try to be as effective as we can to be able to communicate our message.
Porque se trata de nuestras vidas.
Because it's about our lives.
Y aquí tenemos una ley en el Congreso.
And here we have stated a law that, or a bill that we have in Congress.
Es la ley Berta,
which is Berta law.
Que necesitamos, que dice la ley que tiene que parar toda ayuda militar para el gobierno hondureño.
And which states that all military aid must be stopped to the Honduran government.
Porque nosotros no necesitamos armas, porque no estamos en guerra con nadie.
Because we don't need weapons, we're not in a war with anybody else.
Para que asesores militares, para que tanta gente con armas.
Why do we need military advisors? Why do we need so many people with weapons?
Necesitamos educación y una revolución cultural, eso es lo más importante.
We need education and we need a cultural revolution, that's the most important thing.
Y cuando se habla de revolución no es que vamos a ir con armas y eso, sino que revolución significa cambios.
And when I say revolution, I don't mean we're going to go with weapons and do something drastic. It just means that there's going to be changes.
Y estamos también hablando de la Alianza para la Prosperidad.
And we are also raising awareness about the Alliance for Prosperity.
Es un 750 millones de dólares que el presidente Obama aprobó para 3 gobiernos.
And it's $750 million that President Obama approved for 3 governments.
Supuestamente para aliviar la migración de esos 3 países.
Supposedly to lower immigration from those 3 countries.
Guatemala, Honduras y El Salvador.
Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador.
Pero son países extremadamente corruptos.
But these are countries that are extremely corrupt.
Cualquier dinero que vaya a esos países no es como va a una bolsa roja.
Any money that goes to these countries is like it's going into a bag with a hole in the bottom.
Entonces es una cuestión de corrupción exagerada, que por eso estamos trabajando para poder, por lo menos si no se va a terminar, pero por lo menos que se pueda remediar algunas cosas.
So it's an issue of extreme corruption that we're trying to fight against, even if we can't eliminate it, at least try to address it in some way.
¿Cómo mi gobierno va a querer parar la migración si el Producto Interno Bruto de nuestro país son las remesas de la gente que trabaja?
Why is my government going to want to stop immigration to the U.S. if most of the gross domestic product of Honduras comes from remittances from people who left Honduras and are now sending money back home?
Y ese es el cuento de nunca acabar. Y por eso nosotros estamos hablando con la gente. Y es importante que también los estudiantes sepan.
So that's a story that's always talked about, and the reason why we are here to talk about what's really going on.
Porque realmente nosotros somos vecinos de Estados Unidos.
Because we are really neighbors of the United States.
Y si las condiciones mejoran en nuestros países, no tenemos por qué venir acá.
And if conditions improve in our countries, we don't have a reason to come here.
Porque a nosotros también nos gusta estar en nuestros países.
Because we also want to be in our own countries.
Es bueno estar uno en su casa, ¿no?
One wants to be in your own home.
Entonces, por eso es que estamos luchando.
And so that's why we're struggling.
Y aquí es una fotografía de 2 lideresas en Honduras. Esta es Berta, que ya no está con nosotros.
And this is a photo of 2 leaders in Honduras, and the one on the right is Berta, who's no longer with us.
Y esta es Miriam Miranda, ella es la presidenta nuestra de la organización OFRANEH.
And this is Miriam Miranda, who's the president of our organization, OFRANEH.
Desde luego, ella está viva.
And she, of course, is alive.
¿Verdad? Pero ella y las 2 mujeres tenemos un trabajo de más de 25 años de estar juntos.
But the 2 women had carried out previously a common work for over 25 years.
Por eso la ley Berta tiene que ver con la vida nuestra y no queremos que vayan a asesinar a esta mujer.
So the law for Berta, that's named after Berta Cáceres, is to continue the work that she was doing, and we don't want Miriam to suffer the same fate.
Así es, porque nosotros pasamos con medidas cautelares toda la vida.
Because we're under security measures our whole life.
Pero la gente que nos da la seguridad es la gente que atenta contra nosotros. Ese es el problema en Honduras.
But the people who are supposedly providing security for us are the same ones that are threatening our lives.
Y por eso para nosotros es importante estos conversatorios que para algunos de ustedes tal vez no tienen mucha importancia, pero para nosotros sí, ¿verdad?
And that's why these conversations are very important, very critical for us. And maybe they're not as important to some of you, but they're very important to come and share about this.
Porque ustedes son el futuro y el futuro tiene que hablar tarde que temprano.
Because you are the future, and sooner or later you will raise up your own voices.
Y si tienen conocimiento de lo que pasa, bueno, entonces nadie los va a engañar como futuros profesionales.
And if you have knowledge of what's really going on, nobody's going to trick you with other kind of information as future professionals.
Ahora tenemos un momento para aclarar algunas cosas y de mucha información, yo sé.
And so I put out a lot of information, so we have time now to maybe clarify some of the information that we put out.
Sí.
Just curious on the legitimacy of the elections in Honduras, and if there's a way to participate in those elections.
La legitimidad, ¿no?
Las elecciones. Bueno, las elecciones en Honduras son un fraude.
So elections in Honduras are fraudulent.
Porque después del golpe de Estado tenemos elecciones de apagones.
¿De apagones?
Sí, outage, que se va la luz.
Yeah, because after the coup, we've had a lot of, the power goes out constantly.
El señor que aparecía ahí sonriendo, Pepe Lobo, fue el primer presidente después del golpe de Estado.
The guy who was smiling in one of the previous photos, he was the first president after the coup d'etat.
El hijo de ese señor está preso aquí en Estados Unidos por narcotraficante.
And the son of that guy is in jail here in the United States because of drug trafficking.
Y él era uno de los cargos también.
And he was one of the drug leaders.
Están declarando aquí en Estados Unidos.
And they're finding that out here in the U.S.
Entonces, cuando él ganó las elecciones, hubo un apagón de 10 minutos.
So when he won the elections, there was a power outage for 10 minutes.
Cuando vino la luz, él ya iba adelante en el conteo.
And when the lights came back on, he was suddenly ahead in the counts of the election.
Lo triste de eso que lo apoya la embajada y apoya a esa gente, porque ellos quieren a alguien, un títere ahí.
And the sad thing is that the U.S. Embassy supports him and supports people like them because they want somebody who's like just a puppet, somebody who they can control.
Después hubo otra elección.
And there was another election after that.
Que ahora es el presidente que está, se llama Juan Orlando Hernández.
And that's the president we have now, who's Juan Orlando Hernández.
Nosotros estábamos esperando un apagón de unos 10 o 5 minutos.
And we were expecting a power outage of 5 or 10 minutes.
Pero esta vez solo fueron 5 segundos.
But this time it was only 5 seconds.
Eso quiere decir que ellos están mejorando sus tácticas, ¿verdad? De joder la gente.
That means that they're improving their strategies of how to mess with people.
Y ese es el problema que tenemos allá. Y lo peor es que ahora quiere 4 años más, quiere reelegirse.
And now the worst thing is he wants to be able to re-elect himself. He wants 4 more years.
Pero hay declaraciones aquí en Estados Unidos que él también es su hermano, es un capo de la droga y él recibía el soborno de los narcotraficantes para dejarlos matar gente, para que actuaran con impunidad. Desde luego su hermano le daba el dinero a él. Entonces él también está aquí denunciado. Esperamos que esto pueda trascender, por eso estamos hablando sobre el tema.
And so his brother was also a drug leader, and there's that this has been shared here in the U.S. and that he would receive bribes basically to act with impunity. So that's the kind of thing we're seeing now about this president as well.
Entonces, por eso vamos a seguir la campaña. De aquí estuve en Nueva York la semana pasada y esta semana estuve en Washington. Ahora estoy acá. Después voy a LA nuevamente, a California, ¿verdad? Para seguir trabajando en este trabajo. Es un trabajo de hormigas, pero nosotros lo hacemos con mucha determinación y no nos importa lo que pase. Si me están esperando ya no me interesa. No. Yo voy para allá.
And so that's why we're doing this work. We were in New York last week, in Washington, D.C. Now we're here. We're going to go to California. And So it's like working, little by little, very little progress, but, I don't care. This is what I'm doing. And if they're going to be waiting for me with bad intentions in Honduras, that's just the way it is, but we're just continuing the struggle.
Así es. ¿Otra pregunta?
Another question?
¿Está el gobierno de los Estados Unidos apoyando el ejército de Honduras con dinero para usar los golpes para detener el poderoso?
Hay mucho apoyo, por eso es que estamos hablando. Hay militares americanos enseñándole a disparar a los militares hondureños. Y eso es lo que no queremos, porque no estamos en guerra. Hay todo tipo de armas modernas de Israel. ¿Verdad? Hay bombas, hay el ejército más poderoso en Centroamérica es el de Honduras. Y todo tiene que ver con militarización. No queremos militares, queremos que manden todos los soldados a sembrar, a producir alimentos. Eso sí sería una cosa importante para nosotros. Estaríamos muy contentos de ver eso.
So the question was about U.S. military aid, right, to Honduras, and yeah, there is a lot of that. They're, using weapons against Honduras. There's weapons that come from Israel. There's bombs that are produced also there. And Honduras is now the strongest army in the whole region, in whole Central America. We don't want that. We don't want the militarism. We want to be able to grow our plants. We want to be able to produce.
Que eso es lo que necesitamos. Necesitamos parar la migración. A nosotros no nos interesa como organización que vengan mujeres con niños por esa frontera de México y mueran en la frontera. Hemos tenido mucha gente que ha muerto así. Ni siquiera lo sabemos dónde están. ¿Verdad? Entonces, queremos que se pare eso. Eso es lo que estamos hablando con los senadores.
And so there's been so much migration from our countries here. Many women who have died crossing the border, and we don't want that. We want to stop that. We want to be able to live in our countries. ¿Quiere hablar de la escuela de la América? ¿Mencionar algo?
Do you think the military in Honduras is being used to protect the people of Honduras, or to be able to, or is it being used by the people with power to just kind of exert their power over the people, not necessarily for the people, but in order to control them?
Sí, si se usara la policía para proteger a la gente, pues no tendría razón de venir yo acá a decir lo que digo.
If the police were really defending people, I wouldn't really have a reason to come here.
Y lo que está pasando es que tenemos un alto grado de violencia.
So what we have is a large degree of violence.
Y la excusa del gobierno norteamericano que los militares van a salir a la calle para parar la violencia.
And the excuse of the U.S. government is that the military are going to stop the violence.
Y tenemos altos impuestos que se pagan al Estado para la seguridad.
And we have high taxes that are paid to the state for security, supposedly.
Pero ni tenemos seguridad.
But we don't have any security.
Y los militares lo que hacen es matar a los civiles.
And the military, what they're doing is killing the civilians.
Porque no tienen con quién pelear.
Because they don't really have somebody they're fighting against.
Lo que ellos están tratando de parar es la gente que está protestando.
What they're really trying to stop is the people who are protesting.
Por eso decimos criminalización de los movimientos sociales. Eso quiere decir asesinatos, vigilancia permanente, algunos encarcelados como yo, ¿verdad? Que estuve en la cárcel, tuve la suerte. Mis compañeros murieron, ¿verdad? Pero yo como estaba en la cárcel, pues de alguna manera pues, no pudieron irme a matar a la cárcel, pero bueno, aquí estoy.
And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about criminalization of the social movement, is that they're killing us, they're constantly watching what we're doing, they're putting us in jail, like happened to me, where I was put in jail, and I was one of the fortunates because many of my comrades or colleagues were killed.
Y cuando yo salí, solo voy a mencionar esto brevemente para los compañeros de África que están acá, los hermanos. Cuando salí yo de la cárcel en 2003, fui invitado por Naciones Unidas a Ginebra para hablar en un foro de minorías.
And so I'm just going to mention this for the people here who are from Africa. When I came here in 2003, the United Nations, I went to talk to the United Nations in Geneva.
Y me encontré con unos hermanos de Nigeria, de Kenia, de Botswana, y el hermano de Nigeria, un joven así como ellos, estaba denunciando al gobierno de Nigeria por las barbaridades con la cuestión del petróleo, ¿verdad?
And so I found some young people from Nigeria, from Kenya, from Botswana, and the young person from Nigeria was denouncing their own government.
Y el gobierno, lo que hizo el representante del gobierno nigeriano, lo invitó en la tarde a una cena.
And the representative of the government invited that young man to a dinner.
Y una hermana de Kenia le dijo, tú no vas a ir a esa cena porque te van a dar veneno.
And the person from Kenya said, you don't go to that dinner because they're going to give you poison if you go there.
Y sabemos porque estaba haciendo denuncias muy serias y el representante de Nigeria solo movía la cabeza así. Entonces, esas cosas es importante estar en esas cosas porque, y también ahí en ese foro de minorías estaban los negros americanos de Georgia que estaban reclamando reparaciones porque la gente de Estados Unidos ha perdido su cultura, sus raíces, no saben quiénes son, no saben qué lengua hablaban. Entonces es una población perdida, producto de la esclavitud. Y se está hablando sobre ese tema, sobre las reparaciones, pero hasta ahora todavía no hay respuesta. Esperemos que un día también se resuelva ese tema.
And that was a very serious equation there in that forum, and so that's why he was told not to go to that dinner. So in that forum, there was also African Americans from Georgia who attended, and they were talking about reparations. They were talking about, the fact that the African American culture has lost a lot of its culture, its roots, its language, and it's a population that has lost a lot, and there hasn't been a response to all that kind of stuff. That's one of the things we hope is going to change and is going to be able to win that fight as well.
Y estamos luchando. He tenido reuniones con Black Lives Matter en Minneapolis. Vamos a llevar una delegación de ellos a Honduras para intercambiar, para irnos acercando. Solo de esa manera podemos. Nosotros tuvimos un foro en St. Louis, Missouri, donde había un compañero de Palestina en el foro, había un compañero de afroamericano y yo, un negro de Honduras, ¿verdad? Esas cosas son importantes para ir viendo qué podemos hacer juntos.
And so we're going to keep on fighting. We had a forum of Black Lives Matter that was in Minneapolis, and we're talking there about doing an African American delegation to Honduras. And we also had a forum in St. Louis where there were 3 of us presenting. There was somebody from Palestine, there was an African American, and there was me, a black man from Honduras.
Y esa es la forma, porque todos estamos en el mismo barco, ¿verdad? Con esto voy a terminar mi participación. Si no hay más preguntas, pues no sé cómo estamos con el tiempo.
Ya se acabó. Ya se acabó la clase, pero
Time
lo
is up,
terminó con un punto muy importante. Muchas
Bueno.
gracias.
But time is up, so I'm just going to finish with that and saying we're all in the same boat, and that's why it's important to struggle together.